Hey everybody, it's Mike from Reelblack, and I'm with
Charles Woods
and KEVIN WILLMOTT. And KEVIN WILLMOTT.
And Kevin's been so gracious. I mean, we had Kevin on the radio show not too long ago to talk about his movie Destination Planet Negro. But in light of recent events, it's great that you're here in Pittsburgh with us screening your film because there's a lot to talk about in terms of race in this day and age. In America, race is always a hot topic, but you're one filmmaker who's been consistently ahead of the curve in terms of making work that comments on race in America.
Sure. Thank you.
So, I mean, I guess the first thing, I mean, one of the things that we just saw Get Out yesterday. I don't know if
I have not had a chance to see it yet.
Okay. Did you want to speak about it a little bit without the spoilers and stuff?
Well, I just to piggyback on what we first discussed, having seen the film, and we didn't want to say too much for spoiler purposes, but I told Kevin I can't wait for him to see it and to hear what he thinks about it. Right. As a person who makes films, and to see on what level, as a person who teaches on films, how the level he sees it on.
Right, and I think that's the key point, because you know, for those who don't know, Kevin, in addition to making independent films like Destination Planet Negro and Confederate States of America, and he also was involved. He's the writer of Chi-Raq, which was Spike Lee's movie that dealt with a lot of the gang violence in Chicago and so on and so forth. And that, I understand, took a while to get made.
Yeah, it's. I think the rule is always, if you're dealing with something of any kind of importance, it's gonna take a while to get through the system. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, Amazon came through for us and really kind of made it happen.
All right. So, talk about the conception of that. I mean, how long ago? I mean, how did you and Spike become involved with it, and talk about the making of that film?
Yeah, well, Spike and I met when I made my film C.S.A, Confederate States of America, and his agent had heard about my film. Well, we kind of had the same agent at the time, and Spike heard about it, and Spike saw it, and he really loved it and wanted to support the film, and so he's a presenter on C.S.A. Mm-hmm. It's presented by Spike Lee, and at that time he asked me if I had any other scripts, and I had a script called "Gotta Give It Up," and based on Lysistrata, the 411 BC Greek Aristophanes play. And so we tried to get it made, that's almost 15 years ago.
Wow, and it's centered around gang violence at that point?
It was centered on gang violence. It wasn't set in Chicago, it was just set in kind of a major city. Mm-hmm. We tried to get it through the system, couldn't quite get there.
So what studios would you approach to get it?
Well, we went to really about every major studio in Hollywood and had a meeting with them, and had 2 readings of the screenplay for DreamWorks. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't quite happen. Jennifer Lopez was going to be Lysistrata at that time, and so I got a call from Spike a couple years ago, and he said, "Do you still have that script?" I said, "Yeah, I still got it." He said, "Well, let's set in Chicago, call it Chi-Raq." So we went to Chicago and really did the research, met with Father Pfleger, Michael Pfleger, mm-hmm. there, deeply involved with the gang situation in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And met with a lot of the other folks, former gang members, current gang members, just a group of mothers and fathers who've lost children to mm-hmm. gang violence, really, a kind of life-altering kind of experience when you get to kind of talk to these folks up close and personal. And so then Spike went to Amazon, and it happened. And
wow.
Amazing.
So that brings me back to the original point. So Get Out is #1 movie in America. And it is a horror movie that deals specifically about, all horror movies deal with some level of fear.
Right.
For this movie, racism is the fear. This person's fear of going to visit his girlfriend's white family.
Right.
And what that represents. And then it evolves into even more where you're talking about systemic and institutionalized racism and things like that. So, we're watching it last night, and it's black people and it's white people in there, and they're all cheering this black protagonist who is basically dismantling the system. Why how hard is it to get something like that through a system, get something like that made, and what are the obstacles? Why don't we see more movies like this?
Well, I think the system just isn't designed for movies like that. I mean, the system is designed to make the same movie over and over and over again. That's how the system is designed. So if this movie made money, let's keep making that movie over and over and over again. You know, no matter what kind of movie it is. I mean, that's how it's designed. It's a business. I mean, it's not an art thing. It's not a, you know, let's enlighten the country. Let's enlighten the world. It's none of that. It's just money. So when a movie like Get Out comes through, you know, it's kind of a, you know, it's a revolutionary kind of thing, because, you know, movies like that aren't supposed to get through the system. And I'm not sure exactly how the movie was made, and I'm not sure quite who produced it and all that.
Well, basically, Blumhouse, they did The Purge. I mean, a lot of the horror movie genres, and their business model is to make movies in the $5 million to $7 million range.
Right.
Spend more money to market that, like make a deal with a studio that is committed to spending, you know, maybe $20 million to market it,
right,
and then getting it out there and satisfying certain genres. So when Peele was approached, you know, he said, like, look, if you can make a movie for this money,
right,
within this genre, you can have carte blanche.
Yeah. I think to piggyback on what you said, they make the same thing over and over again. It's formulaic. We see the same stories. But I was telling Mike, I think what happened here is, okay, we've had horror films, just another horror film. How can we tweak it?
Right.
And blackness is the way they could tweak it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that combination has always been ripe for social comment, you know, and it's really great that he's done this. Those Purge movies are not dumb movies either. I mean, those Purge movies say a lot about the current state of affairs right now too.
Yes.
So it seems like that company kind of isn't afraid of movies that kind of go there to some level, which is really great.
Kevin, when you say go there, Purge, you bring up Purge, and when people see Get Out and how it's going to relate to what's happening socially,
right,
where we're talking about, we have issues of climate control, dystopia, looks like it's in the near future.
Right.
We got to get rid of some people.
Well, you know, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you know, the Trump thing is, you know, just this great example of where we've been heading for the last 20 years or more, right? And President Obama just drove America crazy. I mean, his blackness just drove America. It's made America. It's kind of, I haven't seen Get Out yet, but I'm getting from it that it makes people kind of, you push them in the corner and you make them see kind of what's always been going on here, and there's a reaction to that. And I think President Obama's blackness, just his blackness, has made America kind of feel like, you know, some Americans feel like they're in the corner, like they were trapped, they were cornered, like, you know, they can't get away. And there's just been this backlash to that, and there's always been a backlash to black progress, and I think we see it in Mr. Trump.
So with this black progress and this fear of this black taking over, I guess the reaction is, get out.
Yeah, that was too easy.
So Kevin, so I mean, that's the setup. Everybody's going to say that's in the zeitgeist.
Sure.
But I mean, you've been handling this topic for a long chunk of your career.
Sure.
So tonight, I mean, this afternoon we saw Destination Planet Negro. You know, for those who don't know that film, I mean, what is it about, and what were you attempting to say?
Sure, man. Well, you know, really trying to embrace that moment we've just had in America, where, you know, this black president happened, and, you know, I don't think any of us were really ready for that. I mean, we've all been, you know, like our fantasy in our mind. Wouldn't it be great? Remember when we were kids, it'd be like, what would happen if there was a black president? And the joke was always, he'd be dead the next day, you know? And that's because Malcolm and Martin and Medgar, and, you know, they kill everybody, right? You know? And so, you know, the fact that President Obama happened, and that he was the man he was, and as successful as he was, you know, it's like a miracle. But it also was this moment that really made us have to look at how far we've come and how far we really still need to go. And so for me, that was really the motivation of it, that I wanted to for the record, kind of put something out there from my point of view that said, this is kind of what was going on at that moment, and pro and con. And Destination, the fact that I'm able to take the 1939 point of view of black folks, dealing with the Negro problem, and so desperate they're ready to go to another planet, and then they go through a black hole and wind up with a black president here today, and you think, oh, glory, hallelujah, we've made it, and then you find out not quite, not quite.
I just would like for you to elaborate on the points you were making, where in film being made to satisfy the dominant culture, and by doing that, it maintains the status quo. Obama, yes, it signaled maybe a change, but there's this sense of the illusion of inclusion, and the fact that what Obama, when he was elected, we just spoke about post-racial. That became the term.
Right.
But the reality is, what followed Obama is what we have now, which shows that they used Obama's election to further keep us thinking that everything has changed when it hasn't.
Yeah, that thing you're describing is one of the big problems, I think, that we've had we're not just now, but really kind of for a long time. I mean, because there's been progress, and you can measure. Oh, things are better. Sure, things are better. But because things are better, they we're being sold this lie, really, that it's great now. That there's no reason you can't make it now. And the reality of it is that the thing I was just thinking about lately is, the thing that's usually used against poor folks is you're making bad choices. You're making bad choices. All these bad choices you've made in your life, and because these bad choices that you've made, not race, not economics, not anything else, just that you've made, that's why you're in the position you're in today. And I think President Trump is the best example of how that's a lie, because President Trump has made nothing but mistakes in his life. I mean, he's made countless mistakes, bankruptcy, divorces, all kind of, who knows what all kind of other stuff has happened in his life that we don't know about. You can only imagine.
Right.
And because he was rich, his mistakes are not on public display. His mistakes are not out there for people to go, oh, I mean, come on, it's your fault. I mean, look at what you did. This is a choice that you made. And you take that reality and apply that to society and to how we live our life, and you see how unfair we treat people who are poor, or and most black folks that are having tough times are still poor. And the thing we love to tell them is the bad choices that they're making. And the reality of it is that when poor folks make a bad choice, it's a public choice. It is for all of us to judge. It's on public display, and it is horribly unfair. And that to me is kind of the thing that cuts against that lie that we've been told, that it's all great and there's no reason you can't make it today.
Well, one of the things I really love about Destination Planet Negro and all your work is that you project things into imagination, and that's one of the things that Get Out does. Like, for 90 minutes, people come because they want to be scared, but for 90 minutes you are forced to experience the story directly through the eyes of a black protagonist, and that's something that now you're forced to see things literally through his eyes and calculate, which is something that black folks have to always do when they watch mainstream movies.
Yes,
like we always have to filter our experience through Tom Cruise or Ben Affleck or whatever. So I mean, so it's important for us to tell our stories. But then what I like about your film is that it's also sort of like sci-fi. And that's something that we're always talking about, Afrofuturism and projecting ourselves into the future. The old Paul Mooney joke. You share it with them.
Yes. Well, that thing that you're talking about is, I think that point of view thing is the difference between black film and a real black film and everything else that kind of purports to be a black film. You know, I mean, the point of view thing is everything. To me, it's everything. Because, for instance, a script I wrote with a buddy of mine years ago, my first kind of entry into Hollywood, was on John Brown the Abolitionist. But it was called Shields Green and the Gospel of John Brown. And Shields Green was one of the slaves that was hung with him at Harper's Ferry. And it was from the point of view of Shields Green. So to understand John Brown, you got to understand John Brown from the point of view of a slave. If John Brown, if I'm a slave and I want to free my family, which is, you know, we took Dangerfield Newby's life and we gave it to Shields Green, is because no one knows anything about Shields Green. And Shields Green was Newby was trying to free his wife and child from slavery. And so when you are trying to free slaves, and this is the only guy in the country that's freeing slaves, he's a hero.
Yes.
And you know what we were taught that John Brown was crazy.
Yes.
But we were never taught the slave master who owns slaves is crazy. But the guy freeing slaves is crazy. That's all point of view. And so when you get to experience a black movie that's dealing with black issues that affect us from the point of view of a black character, a black hero especially, it's a totally different kind of experience, and that's very rare in Hollywood. Most Hollywood movies, when they deal with race, they want to share the point of view at best. You know, it's a shared point of view with typically a white sidekick or a white person that is experiencing a black kind of experience. And I call that kind of that's one of the big problems in Hollywood, where you've got to, you know, I remember one time a producer in Hollywood, they wanted me to rewrite Sounder. And this guy had approached me about it. He liked the script that I'd written, and he wanted me to go back to the book. And in the book, basically, there are no white people in the book that are really good guys. You know, there's a few. You know, there's a lady, Mrs. Boatwright, that's you know, and in the old movie, you know, she's kind of this only white person in the movie that's kind of a nice person. And that character's not really in the book. And sometimes in Black history, there was no good white people in the room at that moment. And it doesn't mean that white people are bad. It doesn't mean that we need to feel bad about anything. It's just for that moment, there was nobody good in the room.
Right. Well, that comes to a key point. I mean, where we are now, this sort of post-Obama time period, it's the writing is on the wall. No one's coming to save us.
No, and that thing, that's why that point of view thing is so important, because movies now, I think, you know, and I think white people are looking for this too, from black people. They're looking for people that kind of, you know, embody liberation. I think that, you know, the enlightened white people right now, especially now in this moment of Trump, they're looking for the response. They're looking for what are we going to hit them back with, and the first place they look is really toward blackness, because we've always been that liberation piece in American life.
That catalyst, yeah.
You know,
but you made a point earlier where, and to piggyback on what you're saying about what we get in film, it's that we can't really get the black story unless we tell the white story.
Yes.
And then when they put it on film, it becomes more the white story with a little of the black story.
Right.
So we're navigating the binary, but the thing is, they're so concerned with white fragility that the anger that would cause us, rightfully so, justifiably so, to want to lash out, we can't have it the way they can have it.
Right.
I had wanted to, you know, you said through blacks and their fight for civil rights and the justice that we deserve to be being humans, we've allowed for women to enjoy their rights, other people to enjoy their rights. But the thing is, we can't have our remember the Alamo moments.
Right.
Okay, when we get Invictus, it's when the South Africans will say, why must we be kind to these people who brutalized us?
Right.
We have to have that reconciliation, and we have to be bigger. But the thing is, I saw a character in Traitor that Don Cheadle did, and the Arab says, these white Americans forget when they were the terrorists to the British.
Wow. That's right.
Yeah, loud jacket. I'm grabbing this. We're still recording. This is live. but I'm thirsty. Yeah. So address that.
Yeah, it's such a great point. That needing the white kind of buffer character, is I think one of the major problems in Hollywood. They I don't know if they're starting to understand that. I mean, that Sounder producer I worked with, he told me, this is the exact quote. He said, "I don't think white people want to see movies where all the white people are bad." Mm-hmm. And that has always stayed with me. And my belief is that I don't believe that's true. Mm-hmm. I believe that white people, the kind of white people that are going to go to a black film, are already willing to go there. If they're going to make the effort to go to a black film or watch a black film, they're already kind of ready to do that. And if
they're white people with empathy,
no doubt about it. And so we don't need to sugarcoat them, and we don't need to spoon feed them. And I think when we do, then we actually create the problem we're dealing with now, which is the backlash to maybe Get Out and it's probably some liberal backlash mm-hmm. to some degree. I got that same backlash to C.S.A. Mm-hmm. You can't go there without ruffling these feathers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the reality of it is, the reason you ruffle the feathers is that you need to go there on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And when you go on a regular basis, then people start to understand this is really the norm. It's always been the norm for us. And it's always been a norm for black filmmakers to struggle with trying to go to that truth spot. Mm-hmm. But for the audiences that are not really fully prepared for this, I think we can prepare them. That's my point. They can be prepared.
Well, I mean, 2 points come to mind. One, I mean, we've been mining out old documentaries and putting them on the channel mm-hmm. just to prepare people, because for old James Baldwin clips and Dick Gregory's first TV appearance. One thing that's gotten a lot of traction was CBS reports on the legacy, the heritage of slavery, and they're saying the same kind of things. Like they when they get to Chicago, they're explaining like, okay, well, you have black people migrating here, and the whites up here are fairly liberal-minded. They don't necessarily feel like they had anything to do with black people being whipped, or they take no ownership of what their ancestors' actions were about. They might have been immigrants themselves, but they were able to assimilate more into the American culture. So I think a lot of people, like a comedian, Bill Burr, speaks on this a lot, where he's like, look, you talk about white privilege. I wasn't privileged. I grew up poor white trash. But it still seems, when you see the election results, that it's not a class issue as much as it is an identity on skin color.
And the thing you're talking about is really complicated, mm-hmm. and it's really complicated in the way it plays out in normal life, mm-hmm. and people don't think that they're privileged because they're grew up poor or difficult, whatever. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is that those two people, one black, one white, walking into the room looking for a job, mm-hmm. Unless this guy is illiterate and can't speak, he's probably going to be looked at more respectfully than the black guy brings in all these images, all these stereotypes, mm-hmm. all these things behind him. Mm-hmm. And it depends on who's interviewing. It depends on the way they see things.
Well, that goes to acceptance. I don't know if that's where you're going to go.
No, where I want to go is, and tell me if I'm wrong or how you feel about this, Kevin and Mike. I see, you take the Academy Awards. Queen of Conway, not there. Birth of a Nation, not there. I've watched Free State of Jones 3 times. And Free State of Jones juxtaposes and is tangential to what happens with the documentary where James Baldwin says, "I'm not your Negro." Right. Okay? There's a scene in Free State of Jones where he's asking, who's the nigger here? And like you say, it's important for us to show people that it's not just about what's happening to us, but when we're no longer available, who's going to be the nigger?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we're getting to that point in America where increasingly I think we're going to have to expand our understanding of what race really is, because the line I always use is that there are a lot of white people that are blacker than Clarence Thomas. right? A lot of white people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, millions of white people that are blacker than Clarence Thomas. And so when we talk about blackness and the way we're talking about being black, it's more to do with a mindset, an understanding of society, understanding of life, and an empathy towards certain things, certain people, the problems of American life, the problems of the world. It's a point of view, and so the white point of view is the point of view that elected Trump. And the white point of view is saying that doesn't exist, or that racism isn't a big problem anymore, or the biggest problem is we need to be safe from those Muslims. All the things that they're selling to us, that is the white point of view, and it has little to do with white people as much as it has to do with this thing that is carried over for generation to generation historically, and it's become what we call the white point of view as opposed to the black point of view. And the black point of view now is liberation. The black point of view has become we are the race that embodies liberation. White people have embodied oppression now. And so, but it has nothing to do with white people or black people. It has to do with this thing that historically has kind of created in terms of how we measure and see things. Does that make sense?
The construct of race, because I look at it this way. You take animals. You don't see them segregating themselves along color lines.
Exactly.
Because they don't have the misfortune of being prejudiced in their mind with a poison perspective. You see? Race, that has been used to separate people. Before they can see that it's a human problem and we need to come together on a human level,
right,
we separate ourselves here more than maybe any place else on the color issue.
Right.
Elsewhere all over the world, it may be religion or tribesmanship or whatever, but here,
that's right.
It's
and that American experience that we're talking about, that is uniquely us. That that the other countries have had various forms of it, but this is uniquely an American thing, the way we're talking about it. I mean, we have to kind of define it in those terms, and we have to look at it in those terms. And the movies I make, I kind of, the thing I always like to say is I have high expectations for my audience. It's like, I'm going to challenge you, and it's like my white friends, I expect them to understand this. Well, I'm not going to question it. I expect you to understand it.
Well, I mean, I'm enjoying. Let's get some more information, background on you. Like, I mean, I think we all come to an awareness point or a level where our consciousness is elevated, and hopefully it's being accelerated by having information more readily available.
Right.
But I mean, what was your induction, your entry point in terms of? Does it come from family, or was there? What was your wake-up call?
Well, I think for me, I grew up in a unique kind of situation. Grew up in an army town, Junction City, Kansas. Highly diverse town because of the war brides, the Buffalo soldiers going all over the world, bringing war brides back, black and Japanese, black and Korean, black and Vietnamese, black and German, black and Italian. I mean, literally every nationality of the world was almost there in a mixed form in my neighborhood. And so for me, the thing I got from it was how important race was and how important race wasn't. It's like it's really important. Race really matters, and you should know who you are and where you come from, and at the same time, doesn't matter at all. And so it's a weird kind of dichotomy there. It's complicated. And so, that reality kind of shaped me in terms of my expectations of race. And I think it carries forth in my films in various ways. My father was very light-skinned and looked like a white man. But, he was born in Mississippi in 1898.
Wow.
And only 30-some years after slavery. And, he told me that he had to eat roots out of a tree. They were so hungry. My father went to the 6th grade. My mother went to the 10th grade because they had to go to work. And so those kind of realities, I think when you're a kid, they don't mean as much to you as they mean to you when you get older and you kind of have gone through things yourself and you look back on that and you see, oh my God, that's America. I'm looking at my family now, and that's American history. Well,
was your father conscious of the various civil rights movements from Garvey to M.F.A. to
not really.
Okay.
I mean, they didn't talk about it like that. My first introduction to it was actually, I think I was in 4th grade, and we were watching TV, and I was playing with my army men on the floor, I think, and news flash, Dr. King has been shot in Memphis. My mother starts screaming and hollering. She goes on the front porch. She's totally out of control, screaming and hollering. My father has got to grab her and bring her in the house. My big brother, neighbor man from down the street that was over our house. And after they got my mother calmed down, I turned to my brother and said, "Who's Martin Luther King?"
Wow.
And I went to school the next day and asked, and I was that current events dude, so I always knew what was happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, Martin Luther King was assassinated last night, and she said, "We won't be talking about that."
Wow.
And of course, when you tell somebody, we won't be talking about that, that's all you want to talk about afterwards.
Right.
And so that I think was probably the moment that it changed for me. That I wanted to talk about this.
One thing, I mean, hopefully we get a chance to post it. Jamal Joseph, it would have been an amazing conversation if Jamal was here, but he was saying, like, King didn't get killed for his dream.
No.
It was because he was starting to talk about some other things.
No doubt about it.
That?
Yeah, well, I think King was a real revolutionary, and I don't mean that in obviously in a violent way, but in terms of really it's really kind of interesting right now, because the Trump thing is they're trying to start a revolution that is the total exact opposite of what King's revolution was. King's revolution was the beloved community where, we're all going to live together and we're going to respect each other, and through that economics are going to be better, and we're all going to find a more equal plateau to live on. We're all going to have empathy for each other. We're going to be a true kind of beloved community. We're going to be able to see each other's problems and see each other in each other, right? And what Trump and Bannon and these white nationalists are trying to sell is the exact opposite of that. And it's anti-community. It is total selfishness, and it is total. It's the opposite of empathy. It's like, this is about you.
Yeah.
This is about you and what you want and what you deserve, because you're an American, and you're not just you're an American, but you're a white American who really you're the guy that made this country, and we're gonna make sure you get yours. And that whole attitude is what we've been actually fighting our whole lives in this country. And Dr. King died fighting that attitude, because that is bigger than race. That is the thing that governs, I think, American life, period. And that is the whole of American life. And when you fall in that hole, it's over in America, because when you stop caring about each other, the whole concept of America is destroyed.
Right, but I think there was also some socialist aspects going on as well.
No doubt about it. And in that sense, I mean, you can't really talk about community without talking about socialism to some degree. I mean, all the things we love about America, Social Security, grandma's not on the corner selling apples anymore like she was in 1929 when she got old and sick. She's going to be taken care of.
Well, socialism is anathema to this culture. Capitalism is based on exploitation. Martin Luther King, he learned his principle of ahimsa, which is a Hindu principle, do no harm to others. When you know what it's like to be treated like a dog, when you've been brutalized, unless you've been corrupted by that, you don't want anyone to be conditioned like that.
Exactly.
See, that's why we can talk about love, because we know how it is to be the victims of hate and brutality.
Right.
And that's why, as you said before, and people see, what's his name was given the Nobel Peace Prize, Obama as well.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right. And that means a lot, because I think the Nobel people knew that they were kind of saying, in a sense, by giving Obama that award, that just because he hadn't really done anything yet.
Right.
He was just being president.
Yes.
That him being president was like an achievement. It was like a breakthrough in terms of America, but really kind of the world point of view, and the world point of view toward peace. And that people could look toward him now as at least a signpost of where we can go, we can achieve that, and you need those signposts because, right now we're the opposite of that. We're in this place where we are regressing, and we're in this place that people are starting to really wonder if we're going to make it or not. Is the country going to be able to come out of this?
Right.
And so the signpost of Obama, it seems really far away right now because it's like we're moving so quickly from that.
Right. Well, before people start typing, I know a lot of people have feelings about Obama winning the Nobel Peace Prize. As we know, as president, his job was to bomb people, and this is reaching people all over the world.
With the drones.
We know what you're about to say. So stop. This conversation is gonna get better. We have to get past that. We're talking about race as a social construct and trying to use the power of our entertainment to help dismantle, if not dismantle the whole system, at least wake up the next generation. One of the cool things about Get Out, it's reaching a lot of young people. Young people are going to see this movie in droves. It's like high school kids, people that basically weren't conditioned the same way we were in terms of race and social acceptance. Now they still have the same preconceived notions about what black people are able to do and not do because of media. And I did want to talk, one thing that you said during Get Out, that you said out loud towards the end was, at the end, towards the climax, you said something out loud, like, I can't believe.
Well, as I was saying, and I want to hear Kevin's take. Without being a spoiler, you have everyone rooting for this black guy, and he's killing white people. But Tarantino's Django Unchained was popular, a very big hit, and this is a black man killing white people. Do you see a difference?
Well, and I can't say, because I haven't seen the film yet.
Right.
But just in terms of the choices you're talking about, in terms of what the movie's about and so forth, it is easier for us to kill the bad guys when it isn't. It's the past. The past. It's one of the things about Wes Studi. When on my films, you put Native Americans in the past, and when you put black problems in the past, and Spike talks a lot about this, when you put black problems in the past, in some ways it's a little bit of an out, a little bit.
It's that historical distance.
It's that historical distance,
right.
And not always. I think our job as filmmakers and screenwriters and so forth is to make that distance shorter, But clearly, I'm sure that part of what's disturbing about Get Out for audiences today is that these are relationships today that the movie's about. And these are dynamics. My wife is white. I've been through this dynamic. I know countless people that have been through that dynamic of being questioned about, are you legitimately coming in here to marry my daughter? Are you good enough? And it's not based on what I've achieved in my life. It's based on my race. And the whole thing is about race.
Or can you legitimately tell our story being married to a white woman?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we need to see more of that because it challenges us, and what Americans don't get nearly enough of is challenge. That's why you see you get the reaction, you get the backlash from these movies because it's not that Americans aren't ready. The fact that it's number one at the box office tells you Americans are hungry for it. But the backlash also tells you that there's some people that can't go there. That when you open that door up and you go in a real way into those worlds, you're going to upset some people.
No, we did. The reason we came here was to do a presentation about black cinema in the Obama age, post-racial cinema, so to speak. So a cornerstone of that is sort of the civil rights dramas that came out in the last 8 years to help.
Right.
Hit Figures, Selma, 42, Race,
right.
Get On Up if you want to go to the musical biopic.
Right.
And I guess it's our contention. That those movies coming out after Obama's election did something, and the fact that they were successful, I think it reinforced this idea, one, that okay, well, things are better.
Right.
You
It used to
didn't have to go all the way across the football field to go to the bathroom. But there's some other things that work, and these movies were all promoted through the system, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
I mean, so what as we use the term technology, what technology do you see in that?
Well,
that subgenre?
the Help is probably the most flawed of those movies, in my opinion. And the flaw really is that when you decide to make a movie about black mammies, I mean, literally, it's the Help. Literally, it's called The Help, and it's about black women that take care of white people's children.
Yes.
Okay, and are in white people's homes, cooking, taking care of their children. And then you need this white surrogate to be this interlocutor for them. And it is the white surrogate that really is the flaw in that film. That it is that whole dynamic of kind of making making that character so important when the character was the most unimportant person in the film. I mean, if I'm making that movie, and I'll just use it as an example. I'm going to be, the first primary thing I'm going to be concerned about is the stereotypes connected with the mammy stereotype. And what are the stereotypes of the mammy? Got no kids of her own.
Right.
I mean, so she's concerned about the white children, but she's not concerned about her own kids at home, right? I mean, when you looked at Hattie McDaniel and these people had to play those parts back in the old days, they never had a family in those movies. They never talked about my kids or what I'm doing with my life. And they're asexual. They have no sex life. They have no romantic life in those roles, and literally. They do all of those stereotypes in that movie. I mean, Viola's character doesn't have a man in her life, and the biggest problem in that film is that there's a moment on the bus where there's been a black male character who's been introduced earlier as this nice guy. And him and Viola is on the bus, and that's when they hear about Medgar Evers has been assassinated, and they're told to get off the bus, and so we know this is a nice guy, and he says to Viola's character, "Are you going to be okay?" Now, in any other Hollywood movie, where you weren't kind of going to fall into those stereotypical holes we're talking about, a guy with a lead female character is going to probably say, "Let me walk you home. Let me walk you home." In this character, in this film, he takes off running.
Oh yeah.
And she's got to run her own self and fall down and get hurt. And so, the opportunity they had to break the stereotype was there. It's like, if I'm concerned about the stereotype of her being asexual and only being concerned with other people's kids, here I had the opportunity to do something about it. It wasn't like it was so far out they had to change the whole structure of the movie. It was clearly there. They were not seeing the opportunity before them to make her character more well-rounded and more of a life that would have probably existed in the situations that they were trying to depict in the film.
Right.
That's why I didn't like Denzel's character in Fences. And I don't need anyone to tell me that's the way it used to be. And I understand that certain people will get the pass because of the pass being PASS, of who wrote it.
Right.
I respect August Wilson's work, but I did not like that character because I'm tired of seeing black men do black women disrespect them. And that's in the movies. And now that's up for Academy Award. And then someone of the dignity of a David Oyelowo in Queen of Katwe, no one knows about it.
Wow.
And I love the black men in Hidden Figures. And that scene where Mahershala Ali is on his knees and that respect, I want to see more of that. But the thing is, yes, that black male heroic imagery, that's one of the things I also loved about Django Unchained.
Well, we got to wrap up in a minute, but I do want. So, But understand. Well, you say like if something's successful, they'll make more of it. So,
Right.
So on the downside, the success of The Help led to a trilogy, The Butler, and then Mr. Church was less successful. The original title of that was The Cook. So we have like Help, Butler, and Cook movies in the last 8 years.
Ouch.
But empowerment. And I'd love to continue this conversation because we didn't even touch like the historical stuff. Maybe we can. But Straight Outta Compton was another huge grossing movie. It has pluses and minuses. Did you happen to see it?
I didn't see that.
Do you have any feelings about it?
I'm a little old for that movie.
Right.
to be fair,
Right.
I mean, that's not my generation of music
Of course.
and all of that. I admire the rebellious nature of it. I admire kind of the fighting back spirit of it. I think that what disappointed me not about the film so much was how the film was made. Was that in Hollywood there are not many jobs that come up for black screenwriters. I mean, when a black film gets made. When they say, "Oh, we're going to make Straight Outta Compton," that should mean let's go to the list of black writers because when they decide to go do Pirates of the Caribbean 9, they're not going to go look to the list of black writers, And so the fact that the writers were white. It's disappointing because those are jobs that black writers. I'm not talking about me, but other black writers.
Everything else, the actors, the producer, the director were black.
Yeah.
The writers were white, and that was the only Oscar nomination.
Yeah, and the fact that they kind of knew they needed to do the black thing, but see, I think part of it is in Hollywood still, they don't see black writers. I mean, when I would go into meetings in Hollywood, and I had a partner who was white, and so when we'd walk in, they go, "Oh, wow, he's black," and it was clearly. They had not seen many black writers, and so anytime you would walk in, they could tell that they were surprised that you were black, especially if I was writing something that didn't have anything to do specifically with blackness. And that just says that I think it's gotten a little better, but the fact that was just a recent film,
right?
It's still disappointing.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I want to get your take. So, I mean, I know you study film, so you have the thing we're working on with the bad.
The bad nigga. I don't like to use the word, and I've used it more than.
So maybe you know some of these films that he references and can comment on them.
But Cole House Walker.
Oh yes.
A Place Called Today. Heard of that one?
Who was that?
This is
Channing Crawford.
J. Herbert Kerr played a black politician, but there's some scenes in there that why no one knows about it. And what's the one?
Place Called Today.
Yeah.
Place Called Today.
What's the one?
Good Luck.
Good Luck, Miss Wyckoff.
Oh, I've not seen that movie, but I know that title.
Okay.
So we're gonna.
We're working on that.
Working on it.
But so there's some subversive things. If you dig through the crates of Hollywood, you will find movies that go against the grain. That you look at and you say, how did that even happen?
How did that happen?
And then. And now it seems like to be crossing over to the mainstream a little bit.
Right.
But I did want to, before we go, ask you, what can you tell us about this?
Sure. My film C.S.A. Confederate States of America, and it kind of came out of my frustration with twofold. That the Confederate flag was still flying over the state capitol in South Carolina. And then also just, I would have meetings in Hollywood. And they say, this is right after the John Brown script I mentioned. And they say, well, Beloved didn't do well. Amistad didn't do well. And so they'd use those movies like a hammer upside your head. And so I wanted to finally kind of get my slavery feelings out, and I did it. This was the form in which I did it in.
Okay. Let me hold it up.
you know, the thing that has been great about the film, it just played like last week in New York at the IFC Center.
Well, the premise of it is.
Oh, the premise of it is the South wins the Civil War, and it's a faux documentary. The South wins the Civil War, and it goes, and you see it from their victory at Gettysburg all the way to today. And today, slavery is still going on. And you know, slaves are sold on the internet, on the slave shopping network, you know, and I wanted to normalize racism, because racism is normalized.
Yes.
You know, it's a normal functionary thing in American life. You know, when I tell my students, it's like, well, you know what aunt and uncle mean, and almost none of them ever knows what it means. Black students, white students,
I'm clueless.
You know, and aunt and uncle, it's, you know, it's those are slavery terms.
Going back.
You know, and Aunt Jemima means a house slave that is cooking your food,
yes.
Cooking the whites, the owners, the master's food.
Uncle Ben.
Uncle Ben, and Uncle Ben was a real guy who was a great rice grower. And had this big reputation for growing great rice. And some guys saw him, took not his image, that was a manufactured image, but took his concept of this black guy that is known for making rice, great rice, growing great rice, and sold it as Uncle Ben's rice. And you know, the thing about racism that makes it so hard to get rid of is that, you know, when, you know, from Birth of a Nation, 1915 to today, the big thing about Birth of a Nation and all of that, it really opened a door to consumerizing racism. Yeah. And so it really made racism a part of American life, a normal part of American life, so that we see ourselves as servants. We see Rastus on the cream of wheat box, and we don't even see that we're being sold that black people is like happy to serve. They're always happy to serve the consumer. And at that time, when these images are being created, you know, the whole notion was that the best service was black service. Yes. You know, the Pullman Porter. You see that all the time in those old ads, old movies. You know, these guys were detailed. They were so great at what they did. But we erased the repressive side of all of those images. We erased all of that. And so, anyway, that's the thing that the movie really kind of tries to do is to try to tell that history from the other point of view.
Yeah, and then I'll just for you. And even when black people do express their pain, like through music, jazz, it's looked at as beautiful, or a gift. Like, wow, you didn't, like you would talk about the Miles Davis film. You know, Dick Gregory ripped me a new one, because it's sort of like it's sort of like we're naturally gifted at this stuff. We don't study. Like even in Hidden Figures, she knows the math from day one. She's not working hard, to get good at something.
Yeah, I think in the biopic, or those movies that show genius in various ways, that's an element that's really important to show. I mean, that was the disappointing thing about the Bird, Charlie Parker story, was that. Because I'd recently been doing some research about this and working on something, and Charlie Parker was in an auto accident when he was a teenager in the Ozarks, right when he was really just getting, big as a, as a musician, and he injured his back really bad. And the black doctor in Kansas City, Dr. Thompson, he said, the only thing I can give you to make you feel better is this stuff called heroin. But it could take 40 years off your life. He literally told him at that moment, it's going to take 40 years off your life. And so the thing that we never see in the Charlie Parker story, because it's always kind of sold as like, well, he just wanted to be a junkie. He just got on drugs because that's what guys like that do. It's like, no, he was injured, and that's how he was introduced to heroin, and that's how the addiction really started.
Wow, yeah. So that's news. That's you're Kansas City, right?
Yeah, I'm a Kansas City guy.
And that's one of the things I hate about when they want to do these stories. There's too much focus on the dysfunction.
Right.
When we got Ray.
Right.
Okay. When we had Selma.
Right.
Okay. So the thing is, cinema in a formulaic way, they've got it down to a science. They've humanized an inhuman condition. they've sold us on this, and I call POP, pop culture, the power of persuasion to perpetuate our passivity and patience.
Yeah, and the patience is the big part, because I think, there's always this element to, quite often in film, that kind of makes you passive. And it's the opposite of being challenged. And I think the movies that we all love are those movies that challenge us in some kind of way.
Right. So we'll wrap it up. But so reward system. So if you got all the way through all this and you're still engaged and you want more, by all means, every one of Kevin's films, and a lot of them are on Amazon, a lot of them are on your personal website or streaming. And we'll put links in below. But I mean, while you're here, what books, what music, what movies do we need to be watching in this era that you would highly recommend?
Oh, I tell you, man, my life is such right now that I end up being always in the old school rack, just because I'm kind of always working on stuff, and but I think that there are so many great movies from the past that you guys mentioned some that I'd like to find and see.
Stand Up and Cheer.
Stand Up and Cheer.
Stand Up and Fight.
Stand Up and Fight. Yeah.
There's so many great movies that have been overlooked in the past, and important things that we need to see that speak directly to us still today in various ways. And so, really want to encourage folks to go out and try to find those.
Well, I mean, our list, the current list for me is Network.
Always.
To understand Trump, and what else is going Being There?
Well, yeah,
right, Being There.
The films we touched on when we did the Technology of Trump.
Technology of Trump, Being There is one.
Yeah,
I mean,
literally, he is the evil Chauncey Gardner. He is the evil Chauncey Gardner.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the one that it's on HBO as we speak, on demand, is They Live.
Oh yes,
John
They Live.
Carpenter.
Yeah, no doubt.
That one, if you haven't seen They Live, I mean, that's the one that
really speaks to today.
Speaking to 1% and the, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, do you have anything you're reading or go back to?
I'm actually working on I wrote this several years ago, and it's funny because sometimes you write stuff and it's like, I don't think people are going to get this right now. And I wrote a script about Joe McCarthy becoming president, Senator Joe McCarthy becoming president. And started shooting it actually, and then just kind of, because people are so bad at history, people don't know McCarthy like they should, and now it's like I'm going back to finish that because Joe McCarthy is president.
Yes, he is.
and the fact that Roy Cohn, McCarthy's attorney, was Donald Trump's attorney, and that everything Donald Trump he was not just his attorney, he was his mentor, and that everything that you're seeing now about how he behaves, it's all McCarthyism, and it's all Roy Cohnism.
Well, we go back and forth. I know we got to wrap up. I mean, we go back and forth. And Point of Order is the documentary that you need to see. Right. It's a little hard to get right now, but Point of Order tells the whole story about the McCarthy hearings. And we've been through this before as America. I mean, one thing that we always go back and forth with is sort of Trump's public image, like. Something like I say, well, I think he's incompetent. He's way over his head. He's a tool. He's a puppet. But what I'm getting from you is maybe there's a little more. Well, design.
I think that the way it comes off to me was, and Haynes Johnson has a book about terrorism and McCarthyism, and that's the two that have kind of come together to feed this fear that we're being sold now. But I think in the end that the link there is not so much that Trump is a genius, but that Trump knows how to sell fear, and that Trump knows how to manipulate, and he knows he's really good. One thing that McCarthy and Roy Cohn were both good at was just name calling. They would just call you names and keep calling you that name. You saw that in the campaign. Keep calling you that name until it kind of stuck. And so they're really good at just labeling people.
Well, I mean, we know. I mean, it's on record ties to Russia. Grandfather, KKK member. Yeah. I mean, how deep does this run with Trump in your estimation?
Well, I think that I don't think that Trump
Or is it just I want to make as much money as possible?
Yeah, I think it was just that, and the link between Roy Cohn and Trump was that when the federal government was suing the Trump family for not renting to black people in New York City, that's when he went to Roy Cohn and said, "What should I do?" And Roy Cohn said, "Tell him to go to hell." And that's when Roy Cohn became his mentor, and that's when I think he picked up the Roy Cohn approach to never apologize.
Right.
Never apologize, always fight back, label, call people names, always be on the aggressive. Fake news, that's just a lie, that's not true. And you saw what was McCarthyism was about that more than anything, was just fighting constant battle with the press, constant labeling of people. Communist infiltration. They're right behind you. To go watch out, they're about to grab you. We got to put the wall up. All that stuff is about make people turning to him for safety and salvation. And that's why he's against the press, because the press counters that stuff, and that's what the press was trying to do with McCarthy, and McCarthy kind of self-destructed. But in the end, it was the press that took McCarthy down.
Yeah, well, the press created Trump because it's good for ratings.
Well, as they say,
that's right.
Tyranny lives in darkness.
No doubt about it. And so it's going to be interesting to see, because it's, with Nixon and McCarthy, it wasn't the system that took him down. It was the press that took him down. And without the press, where would we be today, right? So that's the fear. Is like if he's able to knock, the biggest fear is that if he can sell people on what they're seeing is not true,
well,
that's a really dangerous country.
Let me just say this. We're not worried about Trump's red tie, his blue tie, but his Russian ties. And they have the power to press. They can repress us, oppress us, and depress us.
Okay, good way to end. All right, so I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, thank you, man.
I hope you had fun. You enjoyed this?
Oh, always, man.
Okay. So have no fear. Like you can find comfort, understanding in the art. You just have to look for it. It's not always right up there in front of you. You got to dig for some of the stuff, but it is there, and just as there are forces at work to try and prevent the truth.
No doubt.
We're in Pittsburgh, and Mike and I, we've had a ball talking to these giants.
Right on.
Peace and blessings.